right, we can go ahead, Kenzie.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this week's Tech Talk at the Tech Academy. My name is Kenzie, and we have Dr. Brent Wilson with us today from George Fox University to discuss digital tampering, which I think is going to be super interesting. And as a note, we have a chat box here where you can put questions, and you can find that in the menu icons in the top right corner. And yeah, we welcome questions. We love people to interact. And we really thank you for being here. And we're really excited to hear what Dr. Brent has to say. So you can take it away, Dr. Brent.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Just a quick audio check. You guys hear me okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sounds good.
No, just kidding. I was just kidding on that.
Check, check.
Check, check. So this, for those who have maybe seen some of my previous tech talks, this is definitely a tangent. I tend to do far more, coding, security related stuff. And it just so happens, this is a topic, obviously it's very timely given everything that's been going on in the world. However, you will see in a moment, my disclaimer, I didn't put this together because of everything that's been going on in the world. But it just, I thought it would be a good opportunity just to sort of, I just want to plant some seeds. That's what I want to do today, is really sort of plant some seeds in your minds, things that you might wrestle with, things you might think about, and not so much, okay, here's how you should code this way, or here's what you should do. It's not really best practices. Like I said, I'm really diverging from my normal talk. So hopefully you enjoy it today, and hopefully it creates some conversation with us. That's really the goal today. So the first thing, I immediately put this slide in, which is the disclaimer. This presentation was initially developed prior to a global pandemic, a COVID-19 vaccine, a 2020 presidential election, warring media outlets, any and all controversial topics over the past year. Just got to throw that out there right away. This is not meant to influence or take any particular sides. This talk is apolitical. It's not red, it's not blue, it's not purple, green, cyan, it doesn't matter. This is really just about some of the technologies, and also not only technology, we're going to go back in history pre-technology and talk about this idea of what I'll call digital tampering, although some of it's not digital, really trying to influence. Some of you may have even heard at some point, there's a book, How to Lie with Statistics, right? And, when I went through grad school, we always had a phrase, the data will tell you anything if you punish it enough. And it's true, right? I mean, you can manipulate things. You hear people use statistics, maybe in a way that's not mathematically valid and trying to influence. So I just wanted to look at this because for me, in one of my courses that I teach, we move into digital forensics. And I wanted the students to really think about what they're seeing. And is it accurate? Is it not accurate? How can you tell? And those types of topics. So anyway, there's my disclaimer. Now we can move on. That's before everybody comes jumping out at me because of this talk. All right, so let's start with the basics, right? What forms your beliefs? Think about it. Think about your grandparents' generation, your parents' generation, you, if you have children, if you have grandchildren. I have very young grandchildren, but I'm thinking, what's going to influence them as they, go through school, whether they go to college or not, and whatever life paths, what's going to influence them, right? What forms their beliefs? And I think it's an interesting question to look at, because generationally, it's different. right? Think of your grandparents. What informed your grandparents' generation? Chances are radio was a big part of that. You know, the standard, you know, the Walter Cronkite, you know, nightly news, you know, that type of scenario. Whereas if you look at our younger generation now, I'm not sure any of them, number one, listen to the radio. Number two, even sit down to watch what I'd consider sort of mainstream media, you know, sort of the nightly news on whatever given channel. And so all of a sudden the information has changed. The way in which we present things have changed. The way in which these folks form their belief system. And a lot of it is your family, right? You know, again, this is apolitical. This is a religion. This is not, I'm not trying in any way get to offend anyone, but if you think about it, just take whether it's religion as an example. You know, folks will grow up a particular denomination. Why? Is it because they researched them all and they think that one's the best? No, it's because their parents were that denomination, right? And so there's things that sort of get passed down, and once in a while, folks, you know, take a tangent. They take a hard left or a hard right, and off they go to a different direction. So when you think about this, you think about, well, is it, if you see it, is it true? If you hear it, is it true? If you read it, is it true? What if you experience it, right? And I think if you think about our generations, these questions used to speak truth. What about now, right? How do you filter truth from non-truth, right? What are trustable sources? Do you verify information? So as you can tell, just take all those questions right there. Those are all actually a year ago not very controversial. Today, probably very controversial to some degree, just given everything that's going on. But you start to think about, now let's think about how that plays into technology and specifically images. That's what I'm looking at today, as I'm looking at digital images eventually, and what does that do? How do we influence people by the way in which we use data, right? So here's a really stupid picture. I was on an airplane with a bunch of students, and one of my students turned around and Snapchatted me or whatever, right? And throws it. Now, obviously, I don't have bare ears, right? But that's a photo, right? Is that accurate, right? Well, everybody can, well, we know that one's fake. Well, that's true, but depending on what you change, it may or may not be easy to discern the truth in that, right? Let's go back in time. I'm going to work our way through history. So let's go back quite a ways. Some of you may have seen some of these images in history. Well, not that one. That's another stupid Snapchat. Sorry. That one actually probably is accurate because I'm a curmudgeon and that looks like me. But anyway, okay. How about this? This is a newspaper. Headline, Titanic sinking, no lives lost. But we all know today that is absolutely 100% not accurate. Well, the second half, right? Yet, if you think of the generation back there in the early 1900s, newspapers were those were authoritative sources. That's where we got information. So think about how this type of a headline impacted those that received this, right? Misinformation. What about this? You've seen this photo probably, right? Again, getting some information in correctly, the way in which we use that data, how we report it. This is an interesting, these are obviously quite a while ago. Some of you may or may not have been alive at the time, but pretty much I'm guessing most folks maybe were alive back in the 80s. This came out of the New York Times. A rare cancer seen in 41 homosexuals. Outbreak occurs among men in New York and California. 8 died within 2 years. Anybody know what this is talking about? This is AIDS. This is HIV. It's not cancer, right? But we didn't know at the time. And this is how things were being reported. So you can see just with that headline, the influence that you would have over that population, right? If you were homosexual back in the 80s, that would have been deathly scary, right? I mean, obviously HIV is horrible to begin with, but I'm just saying the way in which it's presented. So how about this one? Let's cruise way back in time. This is Stalin. Okay, we're gonna do a little history lesson as long as we're here today. So it's both tech and history. So here's Stalin, and that's not the actual real photo. That's the real photo. So even back then, even though this isn't digital, we were airbrushing photos, we were editing images in order to change the meaning of a picture, right? In this case, the person they airbrushed out fell out of favor with Stalin, didn't want him in the photo, so he just took him out, right? And you might go, well, is that a big deal? It changes the meaning, right? It changes the meaning. What about this one? Here's Benito Mussolini, 1942. What is that picture? If you had to say one word, okay, now it's interactive for just a brief moment. What does that picture say to you? Just one word. What is it? Right. Triumphant. I love that. Triumphant. Strong. Power. Victory. Absolutely. That's what we're trying to, or not we, that's what he was trying to convey. That's not the real photo. Do those same words work when you see the real photo and you have to have a horse handler? Doesn't convey the same power and triumph and victory, right? So again, by changing information, whether it's true data or whether it's images, we change the way people see things. I guarantee you, had I given you the second photo first, we may not have come up with the same words, right? You might say, well, it's a posed picture. It's, all of a sudden it takes on a little bit different spin to it. Not sure.
I have totally taken a photo with someone spotting me in a circus type thing, maybe upside down in a handstand, and edited my spotter out.
Okay.
So it happened.
For what purpose?
To make myself seem cooler than I really am.
All right. So, right, changing minds through changing data. That's exactly right. And yet, I'm pretty sure. And Kenzie, I'm not just picking on you. You outed yourself, right? So, yeah, I'm sure that it wasn't one of those. Oh, should I do this? Should I not? Oh, absolutely, right? It's really not. What does it matter? It's just a picture of me doing a handstand or whatever the case. Well, like this. Here's a photo, 1970. I don't know if anybody remembers this historical story, but there was a sniper on the Kent State in the clock tower and shot some students, sort of our first school shooting. And this is actually the image that was published, but it's not the real image. The actual image is really, really close to it. The only thing that's different is we have this stake. There's a fence stake in the background that they took out. And if you look really close, you can sort of see that the editing, they didn't do a really, really good job. Now, does that change the meaning of it? Probably not, but it makes it more, you're more focused on the foreground instead of going, wow, look, there's a stake through her head, right? You don't get distracted by that extraneous piece of information. So at the time, they felt this was valid. Okay. You know, what's the intent? What are the reasons for doing these? How about this one? Here's an Oregon girl. You guys remember Tanya Harding, right? So Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan, all right? And the big 1980 Olympics, and, you know, Tanya Harding has Nancy's knees capped, right? So there's a big hubbub there. So you look at this and you go, okay, what were they trying to convey here? This image is trying to convey that these two are actually competing on the ice, sharing the ice. I guarantee you these two skaters never shared the ice together, right? And so, I mean, I get what the purpose is, but when you do this, you create an image that says one thing that may not be accurate. And so all of a sudden, how many folks are as well, if I see it, I know it's true. Well, there you go. See it, but it's not true. This is not a good one. These are two actual covers for Time and Newsweek back when O.J. Simpson was on trial. It's the same photo, but one's been edited. The Time magazine obviously made it darker. Why? What was their intent? Make it look more ominous, make it look more guilty, right? This is not okay, right? But this happens, and it's been happening forever. And now, you know, you look at everything that's gone on this past year. It's just this. That's why this talk is right on the edge of having people scream at me. But I think it's important just to sort of think about. This one's sort of fun. So this was a picture that was published in 2008. It was on the front page of most major newspapers, and it was of an Iranian missile test. Okay, this image was supplied by SEPA News, which was the media arm of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. What are they trying to convey with this image? Same as Mussolini, right? Strength, power, strong, victorious. The picture doesn't give that when one of the missiles actually doesn't fire. So take a look, if you will, in the edited picture. Look at that cloud pattern and that cloud pattern, and magically two missiles created the identical cloud pattern, right? So it was a quick Photoshop this missile over on top of this one in order, again, to convey strength, to convey power, right? This image, 1997, was published. This is in Egypt, Luxor, Egypt, and 58 tourists at the time were killed. Obviously, what are they trying to convey with this image? That's, you know, the first thing I'll bet you almost all of us, when you saw that and you saw tourists killed, you thought blood. Well, does it pass the sniff test? Meaning 58 people. How much blood in the human body? Could you get that much blood out of 58 people? I mean, you just got to step back. It's not the image. They edited it. They just added a little color. It was actually water. And yet we changed it. Not we. I always say we as though I'm the guilty party. I'm not. But it, again, just sort of speaks to this type of thing. Now, just so you know where we're going with all this, you're like, wow, is this TikTok? Eventually, we're getting to steganography, where we hide images inside of images. So that's where we will end up at the end, just so you know where we're going, before people start bailing and writing letters to Eric and Jack. Get this guy out of here. Oh, how about this one? This is simple. It's an undergraduate application. for University of Wisconsin, 2001, 2002. Yeah. Just, I mean, George Fox, we got tons of these types of photos, right? Come to this school, have a good time, you know, all those sort of marketing material and everything. Absolutely. That's not the original photo. The original photo's on the right. It's not a very diverse crowd on the right. But it's far more diverse on the left. Kenzie's like, oh my God. Right? This is not okay. Right? And again, what's the intent? What are we trying to convey? You know, earlier, changing water, you know, a little bit of water to blood wasn't okay, but, you know, this edit or that edit, editing out a horse handler, all these things happen up through time. 2004, this was published, a British soldier gesturing to an Iraqi civilian to seek cover. This took a lot of heat because it made it look as though the very aggressive stance, you got a father with a child, you know, how could this be? Again, this image actually was proven that two images were put together. The bottom two images, where on the left, he's gesturing to someone to stop. The father with the child is even looking at whoever that someone is, and it hasn't approached him. As he begins to approach, while he doesn't completely lower his weapon, there's at least a far less aggressive stance. But you put the two together and you get a much different image. All right, pop culture. Who is it?
Katie Couric.
Yes,
Exactly.
there you go. Not the original picture. The original picture is on the right. Picture that got published is on the left. It's a little different. You can notice, obviously, we have a little bit more room here, right? So they used this to trim down. They used it definitely to make some edits in here, right? And so we're making some changes that way. Now, I don't know how people feel about that. For me, this is not okay either. That's my opinion. This is not okay, right? Very popular photo. I shouldn't say popular. Famous photo, 1989, right? Tiananmen Square in Beijing, China. This is one of the color photos. This was a black and white photo that was actually used as part of a publication coming out of China. That's the actual photo. This is the published version of it. Really wasn't a protest. It was a parade. It was just a parade. See all the people? So again, radically changing what that particular one is. This next one is probably my absolute favorite. So on the left are 4 frames out of a military propaganda video coming out of China, showing the capability and strength of one of their new fighters, okay, new fighter jets. That's on the left. On the right happens to be 4 frames out of the movie Top Gun. Shocking, I tell you. Shocking. 2011, Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, Nature Photographer of the Year. It's a winning photo. Was never taken. It was actually a composite of some stock photos that they photoshopped in together. So the winning photo is actually here on the right, and they were able to determine that it literally was able to use these stock photos with some Photoshop editing. And yet they were literally the nation's nature photographer of the year and didn't take a picture, right? All right, so while this has all been fun, now, if you don't mind, I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox, just a little one. And let's talk about this. So in 2011, starting to the most models of H&M, I have a 23-year-old daughter. I see this all the time. Okay. Most models on H&M are computer generated. You look, here are 5 women, all of which have some different features to them and come across as a different person, yet they all have the exact same hand. Right? So these are all computer generated. Which leads me to my side note. As a father of 3 daughters, teach your children about beauty from within, right? And I want to show you guys something. I told you, you guys are never going to invite me back after this one. This is like a major tangent. I want to go over and give me 1 minute and 14 seconds here. This is a video produced by Dove, the people that make the soap. It's called Evolution. And I don't think there's sound because I'm running it through here. I don't think you can see it. It doesn't matter. It's just music anyway. So it's basically a model. So obviously it's time lapse as she gets ready for her photo shoot, etc. Okay, that was short and sweet. But the point is this. From a father's perspective, I have 20-some-year-old daughters who grow up and think that is the image that they need to emulate. That is the image of, quote, beauty. Yet that is not real. You noticed all the Photoshop at the end, right? Longer necks, larger eyes, all those sort of things. So all of a sudden we have our young women in our society growing up trying to be like this. We have young men in society looking for this because they too think that's beauty. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. But I think it's important that, that is, in my opinion, not okay. How about this? I know we just have tons of photos here coming up. Well, you're welcome. Oh, that would be Kenzie. I'm like, who's Area 3 marketing and outreach? Oh, yeah, that's it. Absolutely. And I get on that soapbox for a long time when I'm at the university because I got 19 to 21-year-olds. And man, I just hammer that home. And primarily, most of my students are male to begin with. So I really hammer that home. But anyway, okay, back to this.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with unrealistic beauty standards, let alone completely fake imagined ones.
Right. And I did put on there is another video, but I didn't want to totally burn all of our time with you guys. But there's another one called Dove Evolution is what we just watched. There's another one called Onslaught. And it's super, super fast, high-speed frame stuff where they're just throwing all the different beauty things that are out there. And it's about teach your daughters about beauty before the industry does. And I completely 100% agree with that. Okay, I can't read any of this, but it doesn't matter. Here is a picture of this magazine, and these folks, and very, again, powerful. Think of what you're trying to convey, not the real photo. The real photo for this is actually the one on the right. And in fact, the one below is a much wider view of it. So what do? We obviously took out these people here. So for this particular cover of that news, they took the females off of the pictures. Again, not okay, right? So the question always comes down to, where's the line? Adding bare ears to me, is that okay? Photoshopping in an African American into a college application, is that okay? Removing women, is that okay? Right? Where's the line? And those are things that everybody's going to have to wrestle with. And for those of us in technology, you know how this can be done. And it's a matter of sort of being grounded, right? We're talking about character and morals and integrity and honor. Those things are important. So anyway, okay, small soapbox coming back. This one came out during the election. So this is an old photo of Hillary in college, and someone's like, "Hey, is that a Confederate flag back there?" And so this made the rounds. No, it's not. You can see this is the actual photo that was used for this clip, and her hand is right above these books. That would be here. So this looks like an empty space on that wall, right? Yet taking the time to Photoshop things in changes the meaning, right? This would completely and totally change the meaning in trying to influence people. 2015, here is a, who was this again? Anti-government activists are actually puppets being manipulated by the US government to undermine the Russian government. And so Russian national television published this photo showing the US ambassador attending one of these rallies. Now, I don't know how many of you, if any, have traveled to Moscow before, but you don't get to just meander in the streets, okay? That doesn't happen. So again, it's that whole sniff test. And you're right, the real photo is here. He's doing some sort of interview, and there's people just lined up on the sidewalk. So it's not some big rally. Okay, we're gonna have some fun with this. So now some just for fun. Has anyone here ever heard of Kirby Jenner, the fraternal twin of Kendall Jenner? Now, I'm not a pop, what am I trying to say? Pop culture aficionado. I don't even know current music artists if they weren't popular like in the 70s. So whenever my daughter's like, "Hey, listen to this, Dad," or "Do you know this?" and I don't, it typically means it's a pretty good indicator it's cool if I don't know them. So I don't know how many people follow the whole Kardashians things. I don't. My daughter does. But there is no such thing as Kirby Jenner, which is a fraternal twin. Not true. But there's a person that actually calls himself Kirby Jenner and photoshops himself into pictures of Kendall Jenner. And he does a really good job. So this is Photoshop. So he has photoshopped himself into this picture, right? So I think she was originally holding on to somebody else and he put himself in the photo. So that's sort of fun. Here she is crossing the street with the dog, so he's crossing with his rat, right? This is good Photoshop work. I mean, this is actually really good Photoshop work. So she was at some party or something, so he puts himself in there and with the pizza stain. I just find it comical. That's a pretty good one too. So if you're interested in it, if you find these funny, or maybe you know somebody who follows the whole pop culture, you can actually follow them on Instagram. He's got hundreds of these photos that he has taken time to Photoshop, and he's done some really good work with them. But anyway, that's just for fun. All right, well, let's talk, you know, this whole thing, rumor or reality, right? What all of these images, so much of us grew up with the, you know, just because I hear it doesn't make it true, you know, but if I see it, I know it's true. And that is actually a falsehood, because we have been changing imagery clear back since the start of the century, start of the last century, actually, right? And so it's a matter of how do we determine these things? And what does that do for us technologically? Well, being able to change images, there is a way in which technologically we can actually hide images. We can do what's called steganography. I'm just curious, has anybody heard of steganography before? No? Okay. Or at least the two that are on camera. That's a no. All right, so let's just take a look at this for a minute. Here, we'll just look at the top half. So we have 4 squares, right? Red, blue, yellow, red, black. And those 4 squares, this is the bit pattern to create that color, right? Red, green, blue, RGB. So if you have all red, no green, no blue, you get red, right? We're down here, if I take all red and green and no blue, I get yellow, and etc. Here is just blue. Here is absent of all color, right? And these are 8-bit. So those that are doing web stuff, right? Typically you're used to doing like this here, you know, if you're doing sort of a web thing, you probably would write that like that in hexadecimal, right? This is 255, and some of you go ahead and do it, you know, decimal based. But those are then the bit values that create those colors. Well, what if, as an example, we cut off the last 2 bits? So instead of 255, if I took those 2 and changed them, whether I changed them to 0, 1, or even 0, 0, that means that that number at the lowest is going to be 253. So in this case, if I took the last 2 bits of the red and the last 2 bits of the green and the blue, and I take, which gives me 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, and I start using the bits on the other. So I'm doing these 3, then these 3, right? And I go through this. What I can do is I can take those bits and make them what I want to. And this here is 97, which is the letter A in ASCII, right? This is binary of the number 97. 97, 98, 99. So this obviously is 99. And whatever T is, I'm not going to count that one out. But all of a sudden, I take these last bits and I change them so that they still produce a color. That's just going to produce, in other words, look at this for a minute. And I'll actually do, instead of highlighter, right? So this color is 25500. Okay. This color is now 253 2 and 0. Now, if you look at those on a color palette and you look at those two reds, that one and this one, that one's this red, that one's this red. Can the human eye tell the difference? No, not at all, because there is it's too close. There's not enough difference there. So what I've done is I've actually taken part of those least significant bits, and I can start putting data in there, put my own data in there. And then I can send you this image, and for every single pixel in that image, you pull off the last 2 bits of the RGBs. That means you're going to get basically 6 bits for every single image, for every single pixel. You can hide a lot of information, whether that's text, it could be a picture, could be audio, doesn't matter. It's just data, right? And so in steganography, the idea is, how do you take some sort of an image and then take some other file, and it doesn't have to be an image. Let me rephrase that. Take a file and take another file and put it inside of it, and the first file still looks or sounds identical. You don't even know anything has changed, right? And that's called steganography. Here are 2 images. One of them is original. One of them has an actual screenshot with a message on it embedded into the document by using the least bit steganography. The one on the right is not the original. But again, human eye, you're not going to see it. You're just not going to see it. In fact, these 2 images, the one on the right actually has this screenshot embedded in it. So this is some sort of a bitmap, and it maybe has some sort of secret message here. Hey, if you want what you're looking for, meet me at 2nd at Main at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone. And gets embedded into that image. Now, here's a picture of a kitty. And if anybody looks at it, it's a picture of a kitty. Yet, buried inside of it is this image, right? Now, this is used a lot by folks. Let's put it this way. This is used a lot not for good, right? In fact, there's very famous case of steganography that occurred. Most of you probably know this picture, right? So this is Osama bin Laden. He used steganography to transmit orders and other communications to generals, etc., via their phones, etc. And our U.S. military and their digital forensics confirmed this. And a lot of his plans were actually embedded into like pornographic videos. Now think how big, doesn't matter, pornographic, whatever, but videos in general, right? Videos are large files. That means if you're taking least bit, you have a lot of space that you can put something into. And you can actually go out and, not that we have to look at that picture all day, but we'll go to kitties. You can actually go out and do steganography. There's a lot of open source tools where you can download, you can embed a picture into it and just sort of experiment with it. A lot of times they get embedded in and then password protected. So you have to have the actual key then to unlock the encryption. So you can still look at the image. I can still see it's a cat. But if I want to pull the image out and I go to use a tool to do that, then it prompts me for a particular password. So anyway, that's about steganography. And so I guess where I'm sort of somewhat wrapping up and just going to open it up, maybe we can just chat. As you can tell, this is far different than what we've ever talked about before. I'm not getting down into code, and in the past, I know a number of folks who have joined these talks maybe don't have a lot of background in software development. In fact, maybe are brand new, might even be just sort of checking out the school, right? Sort of saying, hey, I might be interested and I want to come see what you have to, what you guys offer, etc. So I wanted to take a pretty high look, but I wanted to take a look at something that just might be meaningful to you, especially during this last year, to stop and look. And I guess where I would go on this is when it comes to images, you know, what are your authoritative sources, right? If I pull something down from Bob's webpage, I don't really know whether that's going to be accurate. On the other hand, if it's, you know, something that's been purely vetted, you know, whether it's scientific, whatever the case may be, you know, every person has to come to those realizations for you. What do you believe in? How do you trust but verify? I think that's what we're looking at. And I don't know, just some food for thought. So I'll just open the floor up. Like I said, Kenzie, feel free to never ask me back.
No, this has been so interesting. I have no idea what you're talking about. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, I was going to ask you kind of about like if the steganography.
Mm-hmm.
Steganography. Yeah.
Steganography.
Yeah.
If that is like I think you already answered it, but you basically need the encryption key of however they decided to change the bits in order to unlock that secret image or information.
Yes and no. You can hide things without a key. So I could just give it to you. If you just had the tool, you didn't need the key. You could just pull the image out.
But I have to know like what style of steganography you did. Like you said, there's least bit, and there's other kinds.
Right, and the tools will look at those. There's a number of different types of forensic tools that are out there that will look for those types of images, and it will run down. And let's say there's 5 different steganography algorithms. It will try each one to see if there's an embedded image in that particular file as part of a sort of a forensic analysis of data.
And how likely is it, like, let's say we just got a random image and I took the last 2 bits from every byte that was there. What's the chance that I might generate something that might appear meaningful, even though it's just random bits and bytes?
Pretty small,
okay.
Right? I mean, because it takes a very specific algorithm to put those in to have meaning. Otherwise, it's just data, right? It's just bits, and so not really sure what that would end up looking like in the end. but it is definitely something interesting to play with, just to sort of get a feel for that. And more criminals, but cyber criminals, are using things like steganography in order to be able to hide information. And so it is something that law enforcement is very familiar with. They understand how to work with these things as well. The law enforcement forensic toolkits that they use are amazing. I've seen and actually got to play with one a little bit, but they're really expensive. So I do not have one in my lab. I have all the open source stuff that costs me nothing. But you can still do a lot of some pretty cool stuff there. Well, thoughts, questions, anybody else? I don't know.
So, Dr. Wilson, if I research steganography and maybe download some software, does that put me on an organization's radar?
No, probably not. I'm hesitating because when I went to do, I could tell you a story. When I went to do a demo of this for a different talk once, I thought, let's just have some fun. Let's just pretend for a moment that we're evil, and and so I wasn't even thinking. I went and downloaded images of like blueprints of the White House and things like that, and then I embedded them in a variety of images, and it was a great lab. It was awesome. But all of a sudden, when I was done, I went, how many red flags, right, did I set off by doing all that? No, these tools there's a lot of open source tools out there like this that you can find, on GitHub and SourceForge and things like that. And so those aren't going to trigger you in any type of list, or, no fly list or something like that. That's not going to happen with these tools. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to fly for years.
I understand.
I have another question, and this might be totally unrelated, so let me know, but I'm hearing a lot about like non-fungible tokens and blockchain type stuff, and I was curious if I was wondering, like, how do you take a digital art piece and make sure that there's somehow ownership like coded into that no one can take away? And I didn't know if maybe steganography was something that like is related to that, or how do they, or maybe or maybe you don't, and feel free to be like,
yeah,
this is out of the scope.
Steganography, it's definitely not within the scope, but you're right. That has become really popular, right? Like the video images, for those of us in the Portland area that follow the Trailblazers, right? There was a little video clip of CJ dunking or something that went for $15,000 or something like that on whatever the thing is, and again, they have to be able to authenticate those, and yet, why? My first thought is, why would you pay for that if I could go watch it on YouTube, but I don't own it? I don't know. I suppose it's the same as playing card, or not playing cards, but baseball cards and stuff, which I was into back in the 90s. So I should dig mine out.
Yeah, it makes more sense to me with like digital art, but I still don't quite get it, but I'm not much of a collector myself. But yeah, I don't quite understand how, once someone copies this thing that apparently has the token, that I guess that token doesn't get copied along with it.
Right. Oh, is that my feedback? Oh, okay.
Might be me.
All right. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how all that works, other than to say there's some very serious encryption that's taking place inside of that, and how that encryption is passed along if you copy it, how it either mutates it in such a way that you can prove that it's fake. I mean, a great example. In fact, let's take it out of digital art. Art, and let's just say email for just a moment, because that's something we all work with. There are digital signatures. You can set up a digital signature for an email, for a secure email. Now, digital signature is not writing your name on paper and scanning it and making a JPEG image that you drop in. That's not a digital signature. That's not what I'm talking about. A digital signature is a way that proves in a court of law that you are the author of that particular thing, whether it's an email, whether it's a Word doc, whatever it may be. And the way in which you do that, it takes, we call it public key encryption. You have private keys and public keys. And so real quickly, I'll give you a really, really, really high level on this. If I want to send something to you, Kenzie, privately, and no one else knows, I would get your public key from you. I would encrypt it, and I could send it to you. No one else could decrypt it. I can't even decrypt it. Only you can, using your private key. Okay, so public is used for encryption. Private is used for decryption. That's for confidentiality. Now, what if we reversed those? What if instead I want to send something to you and prove that it came from me, and I don't care if anybody sees it? I could encrypt it with my private key, and now anybody who has my public key can decrypt it. Well, the fact that my public key decrypts it proves without a doubt that I'm the one that encrypted it. And that's called a digital signature. So in the world of cryptography, some folks may have heard of RSA encryption. That uses a public and a private key. And that's what we did. Maybe sometime we should do a cryptography thing. That would be fun.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah, because I teach cryptography as well. That would be a fun thing to do. It's the trick with cryptography is to keep it high enough that we all understand it, rather than get down into all the mathematics of it that just can completely overwhelm you really, really quick. But yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of those NFTs are going for millions.
Oh, is that what those are?
No, just NFTs in general.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, maybe we need to get someone on here. I wonder if Robbie Krasinski can talk about NFTs. He's going to give a talk in May, but I know he's a blockchain guy.
Oh, nice.
I'm sure he could.
Because I don't know what they are, but they're popping up everywhere.
Yeah. Phil just talked about, at Adobe Max past year, they've talked about verifying images and who made them. So they're going to be using some sort of digital signature in that type of a situation in order to do that verification.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I kind of thought at some point technology would make it so that, it would be much harder to actually own things, but technology's like showing that it can kind of keep up.
Right. And, the whole blockchain thing is quite cool too, because blockchain keeps a historical record of all transactions. And so, again, you have the ability in a court of law. I always got to use that phrase because that's sort of the standard. You have to be able to prove without a doubt that this is the chain of custody or this is the chain of transactions that have taken place. And blockchain gives that to you as well. Yeah, very interesting. Thoughts, questions?
Yeah, we'll keep the floor open for another couple minutes if anyone has any questions or comments.
And we can get more geeky next time.
Well, people are welcome to ask questions in the chat as well.
Let's see. What are we talking about?
Hey, Keenan, I saw that you were coming in towards the end of the chat. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't post the wrong time anywhere.
Well, is this the end of the chat?
Yeah.
I thought this was supposed to start at 2:00.
Yeah, so I've got it posted for 2 p.m. Mountain
1 to
time in
2.
some places,
Okay,
and then
nope.
1 p.m. Pacific time. But there's totally a chance that I posted the wrong time somewhere, so I wanted to check with you and make sure you do that.
Well, I'm looking at one of my emails here, and it says 1 to 2, and I thought it was starting at 2, so I misread it clearly.
No worries.
Probably an error on my end.
Yeah, no worries. We're going to put this recording up on our YouTube channel, and I can I'll put that link in the chat for you. So if you do want to check out the full talk, you're more than welcome to do that. It'll be up tomorrow.
Oh, good. Oh, good. All right.
And that is in the chat box now.
Yeah, it'll be up late this evening on YouTube.
Fantastic. And this talk was about things like deep fakes, right?
Yeah, digital.
Sort of.
I use some clickbait to advertise this method. This talk.
Did you use that phrase out there?
I did throw the phrase deep fakes. I didn't say we were talking about them, but I said with those things happening, it's important to understand the digital tampering of information.
Right. Well, and it does relate. I specifically looked at images and not so much, the whole video aspect of deep fakes, but at the end of the day, what is a deep fake other than a digitally tampered file in some way to try to influence somebody in some other way, right?
So far from what I've seen of video and audio deep fakes, they leave enough artifacts that one way or another you can generally tell that they're altered. That's the issue. The video and audio deep fakes, at least, they're not sophisticated yet enough to the point that they can't be detected.
And the key phrase there is yet.
Right.
Yeah. Technology is exponentially moving ahead.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. Oh, well, I'm sure that this was really interesting. I look forward to seeing it on YouTube.
And we'll have Dr. Brent back probably sometime in June, maybe, to talk about cryptography.
Yeah, we can do that. That would be fun.
Fantastic. All right. Well, sorry I missed it.
No worries.
I'm curious, Dr. Wilson, and what advice do you give to your students for being able to tell what is fake and what is how to be able to navigate technology and where we're going with things being manipulated the way they are now?
Yeah, it's a great question. The one thing that and it's very timely given this past year with everything going on, but the one thing I definitely tell them is you really have to the best of your ability, trust but verify, right? You need to try to discern the information you're gathering, the data that you're gathering. You need to be able to figure out a way, or at least, what's the best way to put this? Within your circle of influence, whatever that mean. If it's a job, obviously it's your team, it's your manager, it's whether rather than personal, we'll just take it corporate for a moment. There has to be sort of a standard operating procedures as far as these are the sources by which we believe in, right? Whatever that for data, whether that's imagery, whether that's whatever the case. And it's a matter of knowing what those sources are. If you're part of it, if you're part of creating that information, you have to create it with integrity. I can't tell you how many times I just hammer in on integrity and morals and character and honor, right? And those sort of things. I don't know that any one person is going to be able to go, yeah, that's wrong. Well, okay, we can do that. Well, meaning, that particular image or that particular piece of data is is not accurate. You may or may not be able to tell that, but with everybody working in the same direction, if we're all pulling in the same direction through education, we should be able to make some difference there. That's a really long, sort of vague answer to your question. But it's really about awareness is what it comes down to. It's about awareness. In fact, in my cyber classes, the number one thing I tell them, the students, absolutely number one thing, I said, when you leave my courses and you find yourself in industry in 3, 5, 10 years, whatever it is, while you may not be a cyber expert or anything like that, the simple fact that you can sit around a table with everybody else and you're talking about requirements and specifications for this particular project, just to raise the question, how could this be misused? That in and of itself is going to spur a larger conversation that in the end will make the product better, right? Not saying anything, we're continuing going down the exact road we've been doing for decades, and we're not paying attention to it. So I really believe in awareness and education and getting people just to speak up, even if it's not in your area. Hey, is this right? Is this wrong? Does this data make sense? A couple times I used, does it pass the sniff test? Right? Because too often we're using stuff, and if you just stop and just go, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. That data is incorrect somehow. We need to verify it. And so we try to reach out to sources or original sources. I don't know. It's a great question. I don't. It's the best I can do.
I think that's some really good advice. And I mean, I really try to verify everything from multiple sources before I produce something or put something out there.
Right. Yeah, I think it is so important, and we have to get. I think we're moving into, and I think this last year has not helped us in any stretch of the imagination, but we're definitely moving to more of a what I would consider to be silos, where it's us and maybe the 2 or 3 people that we trust, and everybody out here we don't trust, and we're getting. I think you compare the current generation to generations past, there was a much greater trust of humanity than there is today. And I think that erosion of trust, I don't know how you get that back. And if we don't get it back, what does that mean for us moving forward? What does that mean in terms of technology, in terms of, whatever the case may be, right? If we're not able to trust one another, then, think of all the technological advances that have happened in the last 50 years, right?
Well, do you think that's oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think that's a byproduct of technology, the trust and non-trust?
I think there's some.
It's a byproduct of capitalism. Or maybe not even capitalism, go back, colonialism.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that generationally we see differences there, right? I think that we're going to get to a point, and I don't know if we're getting close to it or not, but there's going to be even a greater chasm between, I hate to use this phrase, this is all recorded, isn't it? Okay. I was just
I can edit.
You know what I'm saying? There's going to be a chasm in pioneers and settlers in technology, right? Those that embrace technology and embrace future innovations, whether that's autonomous cars, whether that's, whatever it may be, compared to those who are like, no, I'm pretty good here, just where I'm at, not going to move forward. And I think we're going to just see that chasm, and I think it's just going to get really, really great. Technology has always done that, right? When TVs went into the home, how many homes didn't have TVs? Now every home has a TV, every home, right? And then cell phones, and then computers, and but I don't know. Interesting questions to ponder.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
it is.
interesting. The whole moral, ethical progression of humanity alongside the technological progression of humanity.
Right. I know we're sort of over, but there's a book called The Cuckoo's Egg by Clifford Stoll, Stoll. It's a relatively short read. It's just like a small little paperback. And it's a true story. This happened back in the late 80s. And it's about, real quickly, it's about this guy who was working at UC Berkeley went to UC Berkeley in the late 60s and then stayed on with research grants. So he's very counterculture, right? Berkeley, 60s, right? And all of a sudden he finds himself having to work with FBI and CIA and all these folks because of some computer espionage. And this guy he coined the term technolust, meaning technology for technology's sake, right? And we want to build it bigger, better, faster. Why? Because we can. What implication does it have on society? And it's really a fascinating book. If you like stories that read nicely, this is not it. Because this guy's a loon, and he writes like a loon. So you have to take that into consideration when you're reading it. But the interesting thing, he wrote this about his experience. And then after he published this book and he sort of toured and talked about it, a little bit later in his life, he found his mate. And they got married and they had a child, and he has this daughter. And he wrote another book called Silicon Snake Oil. And it was fascinating, just these two books. Because in the first one, he is technology for technology's sake. We want to make it bigger, better, faster, right? Just do everything we can. And now in the second book, he's going, whoa, time out, because he's looking at his little girl. It's like, what kind of world are we creating for her? So he starts to really pull back, and instead of just put blinders on, he starts looking to the side and looking at what are the implications of this, right? And on that point, another classic, okay, now I'm going to age myself. Back in the 80s, there's a movie called Real Genius with Val Kilmer. It's a cheesy movie. It's fun, though. There's this scene in there where they build this laser, this massive, 1.21 gigawatts. No, that's Back to the Future. But anyway, builds this laser. Thank you, Arlo. Builds this laser. They send it up into on this plane, and it can vaporize a human from space, right? And all of a sudden, all of a sudden, somebody starts questioning, like, oh, and it destroys itself. You can fire it once, and it basically burns itself up. So then they're like, well, why would we build such a thing? And it's like, well, I don't care. Let the engineers figure out something to do with it. But we could do it. And it really pushes the question, why are we doing some of the technologies that we're doing? Are we doing it just because we can? Or are we doing it to truly better mankind? Are we really doing it to better our place on this earth, right? And I think, see, now you got me on some major soapboxes. Sorry. I think we're getting there, but here's my hope. My hope is in our current younger generation. And when I say younger, I'm talking about 20 and below. My hope is in that generation, and here's why. Since 1969, if you track the number of actual bachelor degrees in computer science that have been conferred in this country, the graph literally looks like this. Goes up, dip, goes up, dip, and goes up. Now, what are those spikes and what are those dips? The first spike is when the PCs actually got into the home. Before that, PCs took up the size of my office in the basement of a building somewhere, right? That was a computer. And so people didn't have access to them. Well, when all of a sudden you could actually put an Apple II into a home or a Trash 80, okay, TRS 80, right? And you could put those in homes or Commodore 64s or whatever. There was this massive, cool, we got this toy. I call that the toy generation. I'm part of that. Okay. Then it sort of crashed because that's not sustainable. And then all of a sudden we had another huge spike happened right around 2000s, early 2000s. Why? That was the .com. You could make $1 million with a website, right? So that's the greed generation, the people that went in, and then it tanked, and now it's spiking again. And they're saying that the reason it's spiking now is because people, the younger generations, are going into this field. Why? Because they want to change the world. That is a noble exercise that is sustainable. It's not about a toy. It's not about greed. It's about changing the way in which we live. And I think that's sustainable. So I think it's very cool. So anyway, if you're looking for a good read, all of that, to go back to Cuckoo's Egg by Clifford Stull.
I love that. I love all of that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, that's really really good talk, Brent or Dr. Wilson. We do appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. You guys are more than welcome. And I'm glad I was able to free up this afternoon for you.
Yeah, I think we could go on for days.
Yeah. All right, then. Well, thank you. And for those that are here, if you're obviously not a part of the Tech Academy or looking, it's a great place. They got some good curriculum, great people work there. I enjoy my association with them. And so check them out.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Wilson. There's a bunch of thank yous in the chat. I think everyone really enjoyed it, thought it was really engaging and interesting as always. And just so y'all know, next week we're going to have, we're going to be back on the job placement train, learning about interviewing and resumes with Josh Matthews. That is guaranteed to be another great talk. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about this talk. You want to relay any questions to Dr. Brent. You want to know about the future talks. I'm going to put my email in the chat box. And we really appreciate you being here. And we look forward to seeing you at another talk. And thanks again, Dr. Brent.
All right, guys. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
That was great. That was great,
All right.
Dr. Wilson. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.